Got it.
All right, we're live.
Excellent.
Well, Aaron, thank you for accepting my invitation to participate here in the Tight Five Origin Stories from the Second Row. Looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Happy to do it.
All right, we'll start off with the hard one. For me, at least. In simple terms that anyone can understand, including me, especially me, what is search engine optimization and what is search engine marketing?
Sure. So at the simplest
You've gotten that
level,
question before.
I have gotten it a few times, yes. And the answer is probably different every time with it, but it shouldn't be. So, I mean, it's a set of processes for optimizing essentially a web page, collectively web pages that make up a website, but optimizing web pages in order to increase visibility within organic non-paid search results, either in Google, Bing, even DuckDuckGo and other search engines. And the ultimate goal is generally to bring more organic traffic or visits to a website through the organic placement or ranking of the pages, of the web pages. So it is, it's something that's always evolving. There are certainly best practices, tried and true, best practices that that work, and it's it's an opportunity for anyone who has a website to rank prominently for relevant search queries. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And a large part of it these days is also messaging. So you may rank really well organically, or your company, your business, but what is it that's ranking? What does it actually say? What's that messaging? And I spend a lot of my time, trying to optimize that messaging and sort of take control of it wherever we can within search results. So, because oftentimes it's not just a web page that shows up in search results, but it could be a business listing. It could be a social media property, your
Media
business
article.
listing on exactly, media article. So, yep. So it's a set of different processes that people like me focus on. In any given day, it could be technical. I could be actually looking at code, behind a web page and seeing what is it that's preventing this page from showing up in Google or from being crawled by Google. It could be a day of content and just sort of writing page titles and page descriptions, or actually editing on-page content. It could be image optimization. I could be optimizing images that are then embedded on a web page. And then, those are what we call on-page factors, and then there are off-page factors. I could be working on, acquiring backlinks to a website and putting out correspondences to doing research to find relevant websites, and then corresponding with appropriate sites to see if they might be interested in, having a link to one of my client sites. So in theory, SEO doesn't cost anything. You can do it. You could do it, Matt. But clearly, yeah. I mean, there's sort of expertise involved in sort of maximizing
Right.
how one optimizes a website. So
when you use the word organic, what does that mean?
So organic basically means non-paid.
Okay.
So if you go to Google and you type in a search query, you will see paid search results at the top of the page. Usually one, two, or three. There might be 1, 2, or 3 paid search results. And then underneath that would be the organic listings, which could be web pages. They could be videos. They could be PDFs. It could be lots of different assets that show up organically. SEM is kind of a blanket, search engine marketing. That's kind of more of a blanket term, but SEO is search engine optimization. SEM tends to denote sort of paid search marketing. So you would pay for placement within the search results, and that can take the place of sort of keyword bidding, where we're bidding on keywords, relevant keywords for a client, and trying to get them to show up at the top of the page for Google search results. It could be remarketing, when those ads that follow you around the web after visiting a certain website. And then it could be, display type of advertising where we work with a client to create banner ads, and then we place those banner ads onto highly relevant websites that are that are relevant to whatever the client's line of business is. So
and those relevant websites are sometimes one of the services you offer in terms of helping people understand the places they should be seen, or what's relevant to whatever business that they're in. May it be plumbing or some type of consumer electronics, or even some type of beverage or snack or candy.
Correct. Yeah, we have. I subscribe to a number of different tools that help me determine, where an audience is, essentially. So who is your audience? Okay, once we've defined that audience, then we can see, okay, well, where are they? Where do they go? What do they read? What do they listen to? What do they view? And then we can use that information and that data to then pull together a strategy and execute on that.
Okay. How the heck did you become an expert in this SEO, SEM thing, Aaron?
Oh boy.
How did this happen?
All right.
How did we get here?
This might take up the whole
20
minutes,
geez.
But I think it's kind of a fun story to tell. So I have to go back to when I was in grad school in the late 90s. I was at Boston University, and I was in a master's program in comparative religion. And I had a focus on what are called apocalyptic and millenarian movements. And those are, very briefly, those are movements, both religious and secular, of groups of people who believe, changes are happening within the world. They could be cataclysmic or significant types of changes. And it was a very timely time to be studying that with the approach of the millennium, the approach of the year 2000. Strangely enough, or maybe not so strange, I worked very closely with a pretty prominent medieval historian at Boston University, whose specialty was the year 1000 and what Europe was experiencing around that time. So I connected with him. My focus was on contemporary movements, as was his. We sort of I don't want to say co-founded, but I was part of the founding of what was called the Center for Millennial Studies at Boston University.
Okay.
And really, while I was writing my master's thesis, I was somewhat of an authority on those apocalyptic and millenarian movements. I did a lot of media interviews, and was somewhat of an archivist. As I was writing my thesis, I was archiving every place that this type of thought was occurring and what people were saying. And what really got me interested was sort of the technology of the time. So this was way before social media, way before cell phones. Or cell phones were just coming onto the scene. But
they were the size of a football back then.
They were, and you got about 10 or 15 miles outside of Boston, and forget it. They just went dead. So, but really, I've always been a geek. I've always been fascinated by technology, and as part of my archiving process, we would discover that these very disparate groups, whether they were sort of Christian focused or Jewish focused or secular types of, green type of movements, their messaging had a very similar undertone to it, and they were beginning to find each other online, mostly through bulletin boards and websites, essentially. So it was to me, it was really fascinating to see what was happening with regard to the technology of the time, and certainly a precursor to what we're seeing these days. Not to go off on a tangent there, but these were very early days. Google had just started. I think Google started in '98. So Google
Yahoo
was kind of yeah. So I got my master's degree from Boston University in comparative religion. Where does one go from there? I really, you either go for a PhD or you don't. So I had decided that academia wasn't the track that I wanted to be on. So what did I do? I went back to school. But I went back to school for another master's in strategic technology management. So I decided that I really wanted to sort of formalize the interest that I had in in technology at the time. And there was a program that was really ahead of its time. It was called the Graduate Technology Center at Marlborough College, and Marlborough College was my undergraduate alma mater. And this was a really intensive 1-year MS program, Master of Science program. We met once a month on site in Vermont for very intensive sort of 3-day weekend sessions. And then we met offline, or we met online offsite, way before Zoom or any of that. I don't even remember how we did it. I think they were just sort of conference calls. So
it was almost part of the program being able to do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. But this was so I was in a program called Strategic Technology Management, and really that it was an integrated technology and marketing type of program, kind of ahead of its time again, where we were studying web design and marketing, online marketing, email marketing, legal and ethical issues, copyright, IP issues, and a whole gamut of things. And it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed that. It was very intensive, but I came out of there with just lots of experience and experience with like really talented people as well, just who were going through the same program. It involved a capstone project where you have to sort of design. It's the equivalent of almost like a thesis defense kind of thing,
right.
And it was just very cool. So after that, I actually got a job with a nonprofit educational institution, and I was their director of technology and director of marketing for a couple of years. And then, I don't know, I was on Craigslist and found an ad for a search marketing specialist at an agency called Charles River Interactive. And
so what year is this, like 2000?
This was 2006.
Okay. So yeah,
it was 2006. And it sounded interesting. I didn't really know what it was, but it sounded interesting, and I knew big things are happening on the internet, and I wanted to be a part of it. So I responded to the job, and I ended up getting hired. And I worked really closely with just an amazing woman who just knew everything there was at the time about search marketing, and really it was an apprenticeship. And I spent a lot of time just listening and observing. Although she was very, she was very much into the Socratic method, where, all right, here's the problem. What do you think? Let's
give me a few minutes, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it was great. That's where my career started, and so I was with Charles River for a couple of years, and then I moved on to a company called Ziff Davis Enterprise, technology publisher, and was a search marketing specialist, I believe. Again, very early days of Google, but we knew it was going to be big, and so I was with Ziff Davis for a couple of years, and then I was laid off, like so many people are, and I decided when I got laid off that I was going to start a business, and so I started Search Maven
This was around
Media.
The .com bubble had burst, and
it was, yeah. So I really, what I did is I just took my unemployment earnings and fed that into my business and into starting it up, and I, slowly over time it developed some clients, but it was very much part time, and so after a year or so, I reached back out to Charles River Interactive and ended up returning there while keeping my business. So, the business, my business was part-time, Charles River was full-time. And I was with Charles River for another couple of years, really kind of, honing my skills and taking things to the next level. And then it just got to a point where the commute was not great. And I decided, hey, I've got this business on the side. In a different place than I was when I started it. let's see what we can do with that. I think
Right.
I can really kind of grow it. So so I did leave Charles River and threw myself into Search Maven Media full time. And
What year is this? 2012,
yeah,
about that?
yeah, about actually about 2010. 2010.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2010. Yeah. Because I ran it for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And so I built up clientele over 5 years, did lots of networking, lots of Chamber of Commerce talks and presentations, and
A little teaching.
little teaching I did. Yep, I taught intro to search marketing, which was, a great way to keep your skills honed, but also
Right.
to prospect, for new
Yep.
prospects who were taking the course. And so I loved it. It was great. I did that for about 5 years. And then out of the blue, I was propositioned by an agency in Newburyport called Matter Communications.
I know that place.
I think you've heard of them. Yeah. They found me online. Imagine that. I guess I was doing something right.
A good proof
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. So I mean, honestly, I was not. Yeah, I left an agency. I left Charles River,
Mhm.
and I wasn't too keen on joining an agency. I mean, I was kind of happy doing what I was doing, but it was a very unique opportunity that was presented to me, and
What grabbed you about the
and
opportunity to join Matter that kind
so
of?
at the time, Matter was really focused on PR,
Mhm.
creative, and a little bit of social. Um, Nothing to do with search, but that's why they wanted to acquire me. So they wanted to, to have search be an offering that they could that they could bring in to to their agency. And what really attracted me, there are a lot of things that attracted me to it, but the big thing was that all of the elements that go into a successful search program, Matter had. So they had PR, they had creative, they had content, a
Mhm.
little bit of social media. Like all of those elements
Yeah.
are what we need from the search side to be successful. So, so I did join them. So in 2015, 2015, I was acquired, or my business, Search Maven Media, was acquired by Matter. I became the director of search marketing services. Immediately, just was tasked with bringing in new business, connecting with the current business, the current roster of clients that Matter, to let them know that, hey, we now have search marketing services if you're interested. Most of my clients came with me, so I brought my book of business to Matter. They became Matter clients, and it was great. I don't regret it at all. It was one of the best moves I've made in my career. So I was with Matter for about 7 years, and really grew a team over that time. When I started, it was just myself. I think I had one search marketing associate at the time, or SEO associate at the time. And so I think there were maybe two of us, but over time I grew the department. I think traditionally it was sort of, one of the most profitable departments that Matter had, and grew it to, I think, about 6 people
Yeah.
by the time I left. So it's, it's an interesting trajectory from
Right. So you
yeah.
recently you've left Matter behind, what you built there, and you decided to become your own boss again, become an entrepreneur again.
It did.
Um,
Crazy, huh?
How come? What are you thinking?
Yeah. So I did everything that mattered that I'd set out to do.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, I think when I joined, I had, in the back of my mind, I kind of knew why I was joining. I was hesitant, but I knew why I was joining. And I had goals, and, wanted to build a team and manage a team. Which was something that I really hadn't done, as a sort of solopreneur. I had a network and certainly bring people in as needed, but as far as, a more formal team, I hadn't really done that in my career. So that was a great experience, and Yeah, I mean, it's tough once you've been your own boss. You know, you kind of never forget what that's like. And
Yeah.
so um,
How's it going so
it
far?
yeah, I mean, it was a viable time. It was a viable decision at,
Yeah.
and I left in March of this year, mid-March. And it's been great. You know, the I have a steady stable of clients. And yeah, I'm glad I did it. Yeah,
Going well
I
so
don't know
far.
what more. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
Well,
mean, it's a very different experience than the first time. I mean, clearly, I had
hmm,
a stable of clients that came with me when I left Matter, and with permission, I should say. Thank you to Matter for that. But these were
for
clients that I
you,
brought with
yeah.
me originally. I mean, I have some of these clients have been with me for 12, 13, 14 years.
Yeah.
So
What
yeah.
are the, everybody talks about the benefits of being your own boss. What are a couple benefits and what are a couple downsides?
Sure. So certainly, taking responsibility for all the decisions is,
Yeah.
that's for me, that's key. It's, delegation is one thing, but being responsible for the decisions, both good and not so
Yeah.
good, is,
Mhm.
you know, I like that. Uh, but I mean, just the freedom, the autonomy of being your own boss, and choosing who you want to work with, who you don't want to work with
Mhm.
for clients. And I tell you that I'll say a couple of quick stories. So, um, sort of just before I left, or a little before I left Matter, there was some transition going on within the search department, and so I had to take over an account and was running it on my own. And within a couple of weeks of taking over this account, the account had kind of been in flux. It really didn't have a full-time person on
Yeah.
the account. It was just a weird timing thing. But so I took over this account, and within a couple of weeks, I remember having a status call with the client, and she's like, I don't know what you've done, but my sales team is crushing it right now. They can't keep up with the leads that are coming in from what you've done from the search, you know, the search marketing
Mhm.
program. And it just it I kind of paused because it's been a while since I've actually worked directly with a client on that
Uh,
level. And it's a good feeling when you can really positively impact something like that. And it can be attributed to specific things that you've done. And especially when that client had worked with other search agencies in the past and hadn't really experienced that before. In fact, they had experienced the opposite. Um, so that was something that probably pushed me over the edge,
huh.
for towards going back out on my own. And then I have another client who is the very successful sort of high end architect, featured on This Old House for at least a season, maybe 2 seasons. And he's one of my oldest clients. And I was in a meeting with him and some other folks a while back, and he really kind of put me on the spot and said, if it wasn't for Aaron and his search marketing skills, we would not be where we are today. And so, yeah, I mean, I really thrive on sort of helping people with their websites who just don't necessarily have the resources of a huge agency to be able to
Mm.
make that kind of an impact. May not have the type of budget that a large agency really kind of requires. Um, but why shouldn't they get the benefits of taking advantage of search results essentially?
And
So
when you're your own boss and you have your own business, you're doing a bit more of the work. And with doing some of
exactly,
that
yeah,
work,
I
you
think.
kind of you gain a level of understanding, but also you get some of the benefits of understanding the impact of what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think I missed that. I think I didn't even
Yeah.
realize I missed that until I was in the situation, unexpectedly in the situation where um, I was having that one-on-one contact with the primary, client and affecting things. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's sometimes returning back to the forest of doing the work can be more fulfilling than kind of
Yeah.
that high level seeing
Well
the
put.
entire
Yeah,
flower.
that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely where I am at this point. So
So we're 3 years, 3+ years after world shut down because of COVID. What are some of the impacts you're seeing from the people you've worked with as clients, both as current clients, but also when you were with Matter and so on? What are
yeah,
some
I
of the things
mean,
you've seen?
yeah, I mean the height of COVID. During the height of COVID, I was at Matter, so I wasn't on my own then. But um, I mean, honestly, we probably saw a positive impact from that with
Yeah, from
regard
business
to
perspective. Yeah.
business. Yeah, I mean, things really took off. People are now home and online all the time. So what a better time to reach people than
Hmm.
that. So really things, from a business perspective, were very positive. The first probably year and a half, um, almost 2 years of COVID. Um, from a professional development standpoint, I would say it's been rough. Those networking events certainly were all
Yeah.
canceled for many years, and I'd say within the last six to 8, 9, 10 months, they've started to come back, and they tried to transition to Zoom meetings and all that, which we're okay, but certainly
Right.
nothing like that those type of in-person meetings where you can really connect with other colleagues who are doing you know the same thing you're doing.
So your team, if I remember correctly, your team was very virtual anyways, right? So
It is
yeah,
or was, yeah.
so you were kind of almost prepared for the virtual environment versus people who are used to being in the office all the time with the same team and so on.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I remember one of our hires when we were building out, I think he was in the office his second day in the office was it, and then COVID hit, and
Oh,
so
wow. Yeah.
yeah, and so yeah, it's been strange times, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But
Okay, last but not least, what book or author or thinker has been a touchstone for you in your career?
there's so many search marketing thinkers that I follow out there. I'd have to say probably at the top of the list would be Rand Fishkin. He's one of the original founders of Moz, SEO Moz, which is
Hmm.
an SEO platform tool. And he left Moz and started another company called SparkToro, which is sort of an audience engagement tool, for data and analytics.
Hmm.
Um, he's great. I follow what his musings online, and he's usually pretty right about many of the challenges and changes that are happening within the marketing space. And he wrote a really good book called, what is it called, Lost and Founder,
Ah,
and that's a pretty intense book about his journey, building up Moz and then losing Moz essentially, and what it's like to go through funding and VC funding and all that stuff. So it's a good read.
okay.
Yeah. Um, and then there's another book. It's probably dated, but I remember reading it and I loved it. It's called The Art of Innovation by Tom Kelly. And
Yeah,
have you heard of it?
I have it. Yeah, it's on my bookshelf upstairs.
Yeah, yeah, I loved it. I just remember reading it, and so it's it's written by one of the founders of IDEO, which is an industrial
Hmm.
agency in I think it's in Palo Alto, California, and IDEO is just this amazingly creative place. It was an amazingly creative place. I think they're still around. I
They're
don't
still
know if
around. Oh
it's the
yeah,
same place, but
yeah, they're
but
larger.
IDEO, not surprisingly, but they designed the first or one of the Apple mouse or Apple mice,
Hmm.
the Palm 5. I don't know if you had any of the Palm pilots
No,
back then, but they were all plastic, kind of ugly things, and Palm 5 was metal, and it was
they
just a
had a
really
connection
cool
with
thing.
Xerox's Park Lab
Yep.
there in
Yeah.
Silicon Valley.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
They
So the
brought the
book,
UI. They brought the UI to the brilliant technology.
yeah, yeah. So the book is really just, I mean, it takes you into the rooms, these, strategy meetings
Uh-huh.
and just, how new ideas take shape and produce like tangible, functional things. It's just fascinating. So,
I use that book occasionally when I'm doing messaging work with clients to kind
yeah,
of look for
awesome.
ideas and different exercises
Yeah,
and
no, that's great.
stories. So that's funny.
Great
All right,
minds, Matt. Great minds.
I'm gonna add a sixth question. First time I've
Uh-oh.
ever done
Okay.
this.
Okay.
Favorite musician? You have to pick just one.
That's an easy one. Velvet Underground.
Fair enough. How come?
Oh, how come? It's just a feeling. I don't know. Just a feeling you
It
get
is
when
a
you're playing
feeling. They
music.
are a feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's great. And I mean, you could ask me to list 20 more musicians and we could create a tree from Velvet Underground, kind
yeah.
of
You and I could
spawning
lose at
all
least
the
an
musicians that I
afternoon,
love.
at the
But
least an
yeah.
afternoon doing this. I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
So,
hey, I appreciate you doing this. I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
yeah, it's been fun. Thank you.
All right. Talk to you
We'll
soon. Cheers.
yeah, we'll be in touch. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.